I'm Chris Stafford, and this is Season 1, Episode 9 of AART, the podcast about female artists.
If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll show you what I mean. If you don't feel it, I'll make you feel it. I'll bring you to your knees. If you follow me.
My guest this week is British-born Emma Gray, a contemporary artist, art advisor, curator and gallerist based in Santa Monica, California. She's passionate about fostering and mentoring female artists by building private collections. A former editor of Art Review who had studied at University College London as well as portraiture at Heatherley Art School in London, Emma has been what she describes as a secret painter for the past decade. A student of Reiki and of breathwork, having studied healing and spirituality in Santa Fe, Emma focuses on energy and spirituality in her practice, working from the inside out. Her Los Angeles project space, 5 Car Garage, established in 2013, is a haven for the female artists that she promotes. Among the many artists on her roster are Megan Dardler, Rebecca Farr, Jess Fleming, Kyla Hansen, Jennifer Sullivan, and Rachel Stein. And now, as an empty nester, Emma is looking forward to the next phase in her life where she can nurture her own time as an artist. Emma, welcome. Thank you for being my guest here on the show.
Not at all. I'm excited.
Well, let's start with where you are right now in California, and then we'll talk about how you got there, because it's a very interesting journey. I love your story, but I think we'll start with where exactly you are now and what you're doing.
Sure. I am in Santa Monica near Venice. I have a gallery called 5 Car Garage, which is quite well known, I think. Well, locally, maybe a little bit internationally. I have, so it's a 5 Car Garage that's kind of open air, and I often do site specific solo projects with artists. Above it, I have a meditation studio, which I call the Energetic Residency. And to the left of that, I have my own painting studio. And my world really exists between those spaces and then a lot of other spaces. I travel quite a lot to New York, London, Paris. I go back to Europe a lot, and I'm sort of reshaping the model a bit at the moment. So it's interesting. I'm actually putting more of a priority on myself for the first time in a long time, and I'm painting a lot. And I'm going to have a solo exhibition in a new space run by 2 artists who've been terribly supportive. So that's happening in June, and that's kind of exciting. But yeah, I'm kind of a long way from home, but happily so in Los Angeles at the moment.
Is the title of your next book, A Long Way From Home?
I don't know. I mean, home is wherever one is, isn't it? But, you know, I do feel, I've moved quite far away from London, that's for sure.
I love the title of your studio, 5 Car Garage. Is it literally a 5 car garage that you took over?
It is. And this A&R guy used to live here, and him and the next door neighbors were friends, and they both built non-conforming 5 car garage, is what the property people told me. And he filled it with vintage cars and albums from his music days. So when I got the house, for 6 months, I had lots of vintage cars and albums in there. I let him keep them for a while. So, and I kind of like the history of it.
As an artist, I'm getting space envy from talking to Claudia Concha, who you know, who works out of an aircraft hangar, and you with the 5 Car Garage. All that wonderful space is every artist's dream.
Yeah, and her aircraft hangar is very near my house. So yeah, I know it very well. Yeah, space is important and light is important. And to sort of localize where I am, a lot of the light and space artists from California were in this neighborhood. And there is very specific, beautiful light here. It's also where Diebenkorn painted the Ocean Park series. And it's also kind of where it's a funny little hilly area of Santa Monica. And it's also where Dogtown started. the skateboarders. So it's kind of, for LA, which doesn't have much history because America's a young country, it has actually got some pretty good history, and it's got some pretty good art history as well.
Let's mention this exhibition a couple of times at the top of the show here and again at the end of the show, and let the people know the venue and the dates for it, Emma.
Well, it's in Inglewood, and I'm pretty sure it's going to open. I'm just going to look at my text here. Mid-June is what we're talking. And it's, we think June 16th on a Saturday. And there are two artists, Christine Calabrese and Josh Astor, and they're fantastic painters, and they're in Inglewood. And they have their painting studio is there, and they also have a company called Stretcher Options. They make a lot of the stretchers for a lot of the artists in LA. And they've been doing little gangster shows here and there. And they just wrote to me and they said, hey, we're gonna start doing little solo projects, and we'd love you to do it. And so I'm going to be their first solo project, which is really exciting. So we've, over the years, supported each other quite a lot. I've shown some of their work and sold some of their work to people. So it's quite exciting to be called by an artist to do a show with them. So that's all I know for now.
Okay. So this is in your role as a gallerist and a mentor as well. Well, we're going to talk about all of that and how that came about, but let's rewind when you said you were a long way from home.
Yeah.
It all began for you in Putney, in South London, didn't it?
Yeah.
But it's not a real Putney accent. You've refined it, Emma.
I don't know. I don't know what a Putney accent is. Yeah, I've just kept my voice. Yes, that's where I grew up, in London. And I did grow up with quite a lot of artists around me, for sure. My stepfather was an artist. My dad was a Sunday afternoon painter. And my mum was quite involved in design and interior design, and actually with some artists around her. She was sort of doing the art and design for the sort of look of quite a well-known restaurant in the late 70s, 80s called Langan's Brasserie. And she was quite responsible for the look and feel of it. And David Hockney was involved, actually, and he did the menu, and he was friends with the owners. And Michael Caine was also involved. And I kind of grew up in that restaurant. So that's another piece. But yeah, and I was in London and studied painting eventually, studied portraiture, and pretty much moved to New York on the heels of that at the age of 28.
But as a little girl, were you, sketching, drawing? What was your inspiration?
Yeah, well, my stepfather, Don, I'm calling him my stepfather. I mean, he wasn't married to my mum, but they were together for a long time, was an artist. And I think at one point, he is an artist, I should say. And he was the president of the Chelsea Arts Club at one point. Very, very good draftsman. He worked a lot in movies, actually, and advertising. And so I think I was very much around that energy with him. So I think he was quite influential in that one. But yeah, I was drawing and painting quite a lot, I think, always.
And what were your chosen subjects then? What caught your eye?
God, I don't know. Anything. Animals, faces, probably people. That's what I like drawing.
Did you make full use of your time in London and go around the galleries at that time?
I was too young, but at one point, I really wanted to paint, and I studied with a mural artist who's now dead. He sent me off to the V&A, to the marble, the plaster cast area, where they have all the kind of the giant David. And he said, go and just draw and study scale. And I did it for months, actually. And it was good. It really helped with proportion and understanding scale. And the classics, it's like reading the classics, drawing the classics, reading the classics, same kind of deal. It gets downloaded.
Where was primary school and high school for you then, Emma?
I was at Putney High, and then I went to school in Bath. And actually,
Nice.
yeah, I went to a boarding school in Bath. And really, my great aunt lived nearby. And in fact, she is worth mentioning because she really facilitated my move to New York. She was a great art collector and friends with a lot of artists who were at the Royal College. And I remember two of them, Julian Trevelyan and Mary Fedden.
Oh, yes.
And she had a phenomenal collection, actually, really lovely collection of art and great taste. Funnily enough, I'm wearing one of her rings right now. And she really gave me permission, in fact, to enjoy art. She would come to London, we'd go to the National Gallery together, we'd have a glass of wine, and then we'd walk through the collection. And she said, no, just stop at the things you like. And it was kind of great because she gave me permission to just enjoy things. And, you know, when you first go to museums, you think you're sort of, you know, you don't really know what you're supposed to look at. But she sort of immediately gave me permission to figure out what I liked in a painting fairly quickly and stick with it and move on from things I didn't. And so ever since then, I've always thought about going through museums as if I'm on a roller skate or a skateboard. And it can be joyful and fun and not laborious, because I think it can feel like labor sometimes going to a museum if you feel like you don't know what you're doing and you don't know what to look at. And I think sometimes just being able to just pop in and find things that turn you on or are of interest frees up the experience a bit. So she was very fundamental, actually, for me.
So what did turn your eye then at that time?
You know, I mean, honestly, I just can think of a lot of looking at a lot of Renaissance, Piero. I mean, some of those incredible, I'm thinking of the one of Jesus with the doves, and I'm forgetting the names, Piero della Francesca. I know just some where the line and form and color was very pure alongside the intent, you know. Some of that stuff. I like some of the Gothic stuff, some of the really early stuff.
If you were in the National Gallery, then you probably remember Wright's piece of the bird in the looking glass.
Oh gosh. Well, I was just in there recently, but they've shut down the Salisbury wing, and so I don't remember seeing it. Yeah, they're like doing a big refurb. So,
Probably time.
Yeah. So I don't remember seeing that.
Did you single out any artists and make a note in your notebook at that time of the ones to watch, so to speak?
I mean, look, I think I was who didn't get wildly inspired by Picasso's creativity, you know? I did. And I think a little bit older, yes. You know, when I did an internship at the ICA in Boston, Frida Kahlo was the artist that they were showing. And she kind of knocked me for six, for sure, especially coming from England.
So with that kind of artistic background in the family, Emma, was there a degree of inevitability that you would move into that world?
Well, I think, yes, especially because my mother didn't want me to. There's nothing like resistance to kind of make something happen. Possibly, yes, probably. I don't know. Yeah. And I think my dad too. I mean, he was just loved painting the ocean and the sea and mountains. And he was a real landscape painter, and sometimes good, sometimes not so good, but he was really into it. It made him happy. So, and even though I didn't really grow up with him, I think I kind of picked that up in my DNA a bit as well. And actually his father, who was a rear admiral in the Navy, was a fantastic draftsman. And I think some of his drawings are in the Imperial War Museum, and I need to go and see them. But I think he was drawing a lot on the decks of the boats in Tokyo and wherever he was stationed in the world. But my great aunt was like, no, Emma's good at this. She's got a really good eye. And so she gave me £3,000 to move to New York quickly. And I did.
First of all, there was college in England?
Yeah. In terms of art, I went to a very funny school because of the resistance from my mom. I didn't even want to go and be a conceptual artist. I just wanted to paint and draw from the figure. So after I'd done University College of London, I went to this school called Heatherley's, which was created by the Pre-Raphaelites. And actually, interestingly, Yves Klein went there, a bunch of different artists. A lot of the teachers were painters who had studied at the Slade. And then it was very, very traditional, like not very much painting with electric light, or if we did, we learned the difference between electric light and not electric light. And then often we just had 5 or 6 colors. There were about 12 of us, and every day we were in front of the model. And for 2 years, pretty much solid. And it was really good in a way. I mean, I learned a lot. I destroyed so many paintings, but it was good. It was really good. It was foundational to everything that I see and do now, And I do like portraiture, and I do really like the figure and the human, and that stayed. And I've kept portraiture going since then.
Were your early art teachers, Emma, were they male or female or both? Both. Yeah. And so the models. And who would be most influential to you now in terms of your style? I mean, when you think back, I'm so glad I had her in my life, in those early formative years.
Well, the teachers actually, I didn't really look at their work. It was more about what they say. And I have to say, I'm now forgetting everyone's names, but I did have there was a Scottish painter who was really, really good and really, really supportive. And a lot of them were influenced by an artist from the Slade called Ewan Uglow, I think. It wasn't so much I was inspired particularly by their work, because I wasn't looking at their work, but more the way they were asking us to look and see and talk about color and relationships.
That's what I was meaning. Those teachers are such an important.
Yeah.
And then your journey began. You mentioned coming to the States. It was clearly designed to be your future, that you kept coming back. But let's talk about the journey when you first left England, what that looked like for you, and you going, setting out into the big wide world.
Oh, in terms of coming to New York, the first, or when I went to Boston when I was 21. I mean, that was a sort of a taster, but yeah, I moved to New York at 28, and I really did actually want to paint. And one of my portraiture teachers, I suppose one of the artists I was looking at quite a lot then, by the way, was Jenny Saville. We were referring to her, and he told me, if you keep painting like that, you'll do really well in New York. But the problem with being in New York is you've got to pay the goddamn rent, and it's expensive. And like so many artists who were there, you end up, I shared a studio, but I could only be in there like a day and a half a week because I had to work to pay for it. So it's complicated. And yet I got exposed to the whole contemporary art scene and the system, and it was very exciting, and I totally paid my dues there.
What mediums were you using at that time, Emma?
Me, I was painting, but then there was so much installation art when I was there. And I did do a project with sculpture and light and boxes. And I was totally branching out into different areas, of course. But the installation art was very, very strong there. And this was in the early 2000s. So a lot of people were using video. And in fact, I did do a summer class at SVA, and I was creating videos with myself as the performer. And then I was making paintings, original paintings of my own imagery. And so it was all feeding into each other. And I liked that idea of sourcing my own imagery and not going outside myself for it,
Was it always in oils or other media?
Yeah, pretty much always in oils.
And your subjects then, what would they have been in those early days? Because I'm interested in following your journey as to how you've evolved into what you're painting today.
Well, what was funny actually is because my ex-husband lived in LA, we kept coming out here quite a bit. And when I was doing the class at SVA, I was so kind of in desire and freaked out by LA. And I did a series of paintings called Pure Beauty Incorporated, because I took all these photos in LA of like, I don't know why I kept noticing, but like rehab centers, and then all of these ads for looking incredible and like upgrading your face with X, Y, and Z. And so I did a very funny series of paintings, and I positioned myself, it was feminism really, as Nurse Grey. And I found that, you know, even back in the day, however many years ago that was, in the early 2000s, I found like all of the beauty things that people were doing were so brutal. And so I did fake plastic surgery using builder's equipment that I painted pink, and then took stills and did quite classical paintings of it. And it was meant to be funny. It was funny, but the paintings were kind of beautiful too. And I was Nurse Grey. And I don't know, like I just, LA as a concept really shocked me. And so I kind of focused on that a little bit.
It shocked you then, and that came across then in your artwork, but did it eventually appeal to you in a way? It became a magnet.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, first of all, it was so green, and I really, really missed trees while I lived in New York. And I really love trees now. I'm like crazy about trees. Everything's about trees at the moment. And I missed the green so much. And so, you know, LA does have this allure of the Garden of Eden. But it certainly has an underbelly. There's Hollywood noir, you know, there's a darkness here. And yeah, so I totally was drawn to it. But yes, it's all that glistens is not gold. And I think that's something that I battle with here a little bit, this, the look of things, how everything has to have this look. My analyst, who I don't have anymore, but he was like, I run away from shiny people. You know, he said, be very, very careful with people that are really, really shiny on the outside, because they might not be so examined on the inside. And it's something I think about quite a lot, about how surfaces can belie things. You know, they don't always tell the truth.
Is that where the nonconformist in you comes from?
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I want to get beneath the surface of things. And I feel like that's been a really big theme of my life, and why I did all the training with various and sundry different healers. And, you know, a lot of the artists I work with are kind of into different forms of psychology. I work with a lot of artists who are therapists as well, and who just a lot who are into Jung. I'm into Jungian analysis a lot. I'm into the shadow. I'm into the areas that, you know, we don't quite know, the subconscious.
Let's go down this path now.
Okay.
Because healing in that journey for you has been a really important part of your life as an artist, but as a woman in terms of your development.
Exactly.
In healing. And I know you went and studied this. So tell us how that journey began.
Very funny. I went at 21 or 20 to go to Boston to go and stay with my dad, because I was being a bit wild in London. I was like, I think I've got daddy issues. So I was like, I'm going to go and live in America with my dad and his wife and my stepsister, who's a dear friend, dear collaborator still to this day. She's a poet and a writer. And I went there, and I went to go and study. I was meant to go and work intern at the Boston Globe, and it didn't come through. And I ended up at the ICA, and Frida Kahlo was there. And Althea and my dad's third wife, who was a healer, she's the granddaughter of a curandera. She's part Nicaraguan, part Italian American, and a little bit West Indian. Beautiful, fascinating woman. And my dad and her had bought a house in Santa Fe together. And she said, hey, Emma, I got to go and visit the house. do you want to come on a road trip with me and drive across America and see the house? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And we set off. And Althea's a healer, like really at 18, she went to go and live in ashram in India. And we just had this really, really wild road trip across America. And I had this sort of weird things happened. I had this extraordinary dream. And I was like, I had a really weird dream that an eagle flew into my ear. And she knows a lot of native grandmothers in New Mexico. And she was like, okay, we're on a vision quest. And then just, I don't know, crazy things happened on this trip. And I got really clear and I got really clean. I don't think I was even drinking. I was drinking coffee a little bit, but my perception opened up. And it was funny because Aldous Huxley's son was renting their house at the time. It all kind of just turned into something magical. And we did some classes at the Dream Institute. I was doing shamanic journeys with a Native American lady, whose name I've forgotten. And my whole sixth sense, my perception, I could see auras around plants and trees. Everything blew open in a way that was completely unexpected for me. And Althea, in a weird way, had started initiating me into healing and the other side of things. And and then I came back to London and I was quite different and certainly not nightclubbing as much as I was when I left. And my mum said, Emma, there's a healer around the corner. Maybe you should go and talk to her. And she was called Philippa Puller. And she was a writer. She wrote for the Financial Times, or I can't remember which big publications. And she wrote a few books. She wrote a book about Frank Harris. And she wrote a book called Consuming Passions. She wrote a lot about food and desire and sex and the combination of all of that. And then she took a big left turn herself and became a healer. And she was part of the member of National Federation of Healers. And she was a brilliant, wild Irish woman. And then I became her student for about 7 years. And she taught me Reiki, and I would bring my friends to her Thursday night meditation group, and she would do wild things and all drumming and all kinds of things. And I thought she was just an amazing character. And her son was a Tibetan Buddhist. And I really did she became like a second mom to me, actually. And she was also doing a thesis in magic and mysticism in the ancient pyramid texts in Egypt. She loved going to Egypt a lot. She would ride her horse literally across the desert. She took these special mystical trips to Egypt. She's published quite a lot of books, which are on Amazon, like about the chakras. She worked with somebody called Lila Beck. And just as I was leaving to go to New York, she was dying. And I was very much around her with her death. And really, when she died, I knew it was time for me to leave. It was really a weird thing, but it was cool. So that's kind of how I landed in America. And I carried on in that path. I then studied Tibetan Buddhism in New York while I was working in contemporary art. So all of these things happened all at the same time. And I've tried to keep them all still happening at the same time. But it certainly infused how I seen the world and how I process it.
It must have had, a lasting impact.
Yeah, it shifted my life for sure. And I really couldn't be in London after that. Like, I just knew I had to kind of find something bigger. And America's a big place.
And whilst you were in New York, you were editing at the Art Review.
Well, yes, I worked at a gallery, and then I started off in marketing at Art Review magazine. And then I became a features editor, and I was just helping bringing in ideas and stories. It wasn't really for that long because I was there for 9/11 and I got pregnant with my daughter and left to come to LA. But then I picked up as the West Coast editor, which was cool because LA was really becoming a thing in 2004. And I was popping about quite a lot, getting really familiar with the scene. A lot of the big galleries that are very established now were all making their names, like a lot of the ones from Chinatown. and La Cienega. And so then I became while I was like raising kids, I became the West Coast editor of Art Review, gave a lot of good writers their first gigs that are out there now. And then I wrote a column for ArtNet as well. And my husband, my ex, was a journalist at the LA Times, and he wrote as well. So we were like tapping away over here.
So at that time, then, did the painting on your own artwork come to a temporary standstill, or how much did you incorporate in day-to-day life?
A little bit. I mean, we had a small place back then, so I've got like really gorgeous portraits of my kids, but they're like 3 by 4 inches. And then it did, I didn't ever stop it, is the deal, but it had to accommodate, I mean, when you've got 2 young children and you're working part-time, it was a lot. So I kept doing it, and I kept doing it with them. I really infused their life with art. We did a lot of projects. Their birthday cakes were hysterical, made hysterical birthday cakes. But I think art was very much in their life growing up. And I think we loved that. That was fun. It was very creative and inventive with them.
Did they continue that in some way now?
I mean, yes, my daughter, Scarlett, she's doing political science, but, her de facto mode of relaxing is actually collaging, painting, drawing, and playing the piano. I noticed that that's her kind of one of her go-to things, to calm herself down. And recently now she's moved away from me significantly. She's gotten into art. And it was when I took her to the National Gallery that she was really wowed. And she's part of the Columbia Art Market Society. And she's also taking history of art. And she's really, really into it finally. So it finally paid off. And my son is a very natural artist, very natural. But he's a little bit resistant. We'll see. We just did a painting together the other day, and he was like, I really enjoyed it. And I said, well, come and do more with me. And he was like, only if I can listen to my own music in my headphones. And I was like, oh, so we'll see about him. But he used to make a lot of videos too of our dog and things. So I would say it's in both of them in different ways.
They've inherited that, and also the resistance to mother's direction.
Actually, the natural resistance.
And at that point then, Emma, when you found you had time to get back into your artwork, what did that look like for you when you were coming with this sort of newfound experience in the healing world and in the spirituality that you'd embraced? Did you require a different kind of space to paint and to grow and as an artist?
Yeah. And I think actually it's when we moved here, when I had there was another 2-car garage as well as the 5-car. And I turned one of the garages into my studio. And in fact, there were 2 series I was working on. In terms of portraiture, I just got really stuck into painting a lot of these spiritual teachers that I liked as a quick way in and to kind of dip into their energy. So that was something I did. And then, and Chrissy Blumenthal and her husband bought quite a few of this series, and they were kind of an exciting series of paintings I did. But I did a series of women on icebergs. First of all, there was a sort of element of climate change. But I also felt like I was doing so much at the time, and parenting, it's so a lot. And, I did a lot of paintings of kind of women climbing up icebergs, and some of them were very funny. And in fact, part of the reason I've got this show, is these 2 artists got one of my iceberg paintings, and it's a woman sort of inside an iceberg that's collapsing, holding it up. And so that's how I felt a little bit at the time, parenting and just doing everything and just like, she's trying to desperately hold it together. And this painting of me holding up the iceberg that's desperately melting, in a warm sea, in a kind of slightly collapsed planet. So in a way, they were a little bit funny and tongue in cheek, but in a way they were kind of deadly serious.
What kind of sizes are we talking about then for your pieces there?
Some of them were small, and then some of them were about 40 by 30 or a bit bigger. But a lot of them were like 8 by 10 or 16 by 20 and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So what were the goals? What were your aspirations at that time in your life?
Absolutely. I mean, painting just became a very important emotional outlet for me. Because I haven't always found it so easy to express my emotions. And sometimes when I paint, I cry. This is just crazy. And so I just find that it's a place to be very expressive of how I'm feeling.
And a very necessary outlet for you then.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the painting came back into your life and was a major player, but then so too did your role as a gallerist and a mentor and fostering new talent.
Right.
Where did that idea, that notion come from?
Well, I had a funny little project space. There's a French artist called Francois Gabelli who's having an amazing career looking after huge artists. And he had a little space in La Cienega, and he had a little kind of triangular shaped attic above his gallery. And I rented it as my office. I was doing some scout work for an advisor in New York. And I thought it would be fun because it was weird to invite artists to come and do things in there. And it kind of started like that. And I was like, oh, I really enjoyed it. And then, when I got this space with the 5-car garage, I was like, this would be a really good gallery. So kind of just started doing that, and have continued to do it. And I've really enjoyed the collaboration and helping artists. It's a nice way to earn money. And I'm kind of rethinking all of that right now and how I'm going to move forward. Because I don't really want to expand. I've ummed and ahed about it a lot because I could. And I've had a lot of amazing artists pass through, but I don't think I want to run, I don't want to do HR. I don't want to run that kind of a business. I think I'm very strongly in the meditation studio and in my own studio at the moment. And so at this point when my kids are one is at college and the other one's about to go to college, it's me time a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot. So yeah, I'll keep going with the project space with 5-car garage, but I'm going to get really more serious about myself because life is really, really short.
And so this leads me to the meditation piece.
Yes. Yes.
And how important that is because you do have a specific meditation studio.
Yeah.
Talk about how that's integrated in, and it sounds like it's evolving now.
Yeah. Well, I built it then with my ex in 2016, and we sort of built it as an ADU, but I was always like, this is a meditation studio. And at that point, then I trained now with a couple more healers. I'm a breathwork facilitator and a Reiki master, from a teacher in England who studied in Japan. And, one of the healers that I trained with told me that I had to put service into my business if I wanted to be successful. So I kind of took him at his word. And I do have a bit of a gift with healing, I think. And so, I don't know, I've wanted to keep that. I like the idea of helping people. And at the same time, I was really helping myself. So I do some groups in there, some Tuesday night breathwork groups. And I don't know, it just adds much more dimension to life. And, I did find that I started really attracting artists at this point on an energetic level who were interested in the same things as I am. And so the pursuit of that has become deeper and stronger and more focused, I would say, in both spaces. Working with artists upstairs and downstairs who are interested in some of these ideas, the spirit, what goes on beneath the surface, etc., etc.
Your art world seems to be probably more expansive than many artists because of these components. I'm wondering now where you get the most satisfaction because there's so many pieces to it.
I know. Well, it's all a great big dance, I think. And I don't know. And that question is up for air right now, you know. Mm-hmm. But I do get a lot of satisfaction in, I see things, you know. I can see things a couple of years before other people see things. And I trust my vision and my intuition. And I see things in artists. I feel it in their work. And I quite like pursuing that, showing it, and then having some validation of seeing their careers go off and be successful. So that's kind of nice. But yeah.
And in terms of your own artwork then, Emma,
yeah,
you know, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
I think at the moment, I'm really, really interested in nature. I've always been interested in nature since I started really having that funny experience in Santa Fe when I was 21. But I feel that, and I also think it's from spending a lot of time in England in the forests and places like Wales where my mum had a cottage. All trees and plants have an energetic field. And in some sort of folklores and myths, there are a lot of plant spirits. And I'm inclined to believe that too. And I feel like, I think the reason that there's, all my painting is set around different environments, icebergs, forests, deserts, whatever it is, volcanoes. And I think the environment is, very, 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 very important. And I think the climate is the most important thing. And I think the reason I keep focusing on it is, first of all, I love the beauty of it, but I also think that we have got to enter into a much greater harmony with the earth. And that I just think it's coming from there. I literally think that we all have to be all hands on deck to protect the beauty that we have here and share it, and share our relationship with it, and share the importance of it. And so I'm really focusing on trees and forests and the energy of trees and the guardians of trees, and thinking about it a little bit like that.
And now that you're becoming an empty nester,
yeah,
and this is me time, as you said, Emma, how do you like to start your day? Is it in a meditative state? Is that ideal for you? To talk us through a typical day, if there is such a thing.
If I'm up early enough, I'll like to do a 20-minute sit. And most days I do that, 20 minutes of just silent meditation, connecting with the universe. And then I'll come up and have coffee or green juice with my son. Sometimes I'll go for a walk. There's a couple of really good friends who are in the neighborhood who are artists as well. We sometimes walk to the beach, which is nice because from our house, we walk through the back gardens, and it's like an hour and a half round trip, done about 4.5, 5 miles, pretty good workout, great discussion. So that is on the table. Or sometimes I'll go to the gym. And it really depends whether I'll have days when I'm just fully at the computer and I'm emailing with clients and collectors and institutions and artists, and I'm getting people to come and see the show that I have. And I find that I can't do that all the time because it's a certain kind of energy that you have to do that. So then sometimes I'll paint, and then sometimes I'll go to studio visits. Probably once a week, I'm out of the house, maybe visiting studios or going to institutions or something like that. But you know, that's sort of the rhythm of it, those kinds of things. So I'm like in the car and on the freeway at least once a week. I'm in the studio at the moment 2 or 3 mornings a week, or if not, I will now go in and paint in the evenings after I've done my work day.
I was going to ask you that, if you can paint in the evening. Is that a good time, and how that feels?
Yeah, it is a little bit. I hadn't done it before, but I spoke to a psychic and he was like, between 7 and 10 is a good time for you. And I was like, oh, I've never done that. And so I thought, I'm going to give it a go. And it is an interesting time. So I've been doing that lately.
And I asked all my guests this, Emma, you know, if they're eavesdropping at a gallery, what they like to hear people say about their art.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. About what the artist that's in the show at the time.
No, your particular artwork.
Oh, what, my own paintings or other people?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
I have no idea. Listen, I have to tell you, I've been a closet artist. My whole endeavor right now is to come out of hiding from underneath a rock. So, I'm longing to have that, eavesdropping happen, and maybe it will. But, really, I haven't really shown at all. I've been in a couple of group shows that other artists have, put me in. But I mean, this is kind of a big change for me. I want to start showing my work, and I've been chronically shy about it.
Is that why you called yourself a secret painter?
Yeah, because first of all, I don't really have the time and space. And then also I just was concerned that I was being too much. You know, I'm sure a lot of women feel like this. I was doing the space, running the meditation studio and painting and being a mom. And, you know, anyway, regards whatever that is, I've kind of pushed that aside now, and I'm just really making space for myself and realizing how much I had put other people first always. And so I'm just really trying to put me first, and I have the time, energy and space and financial resources to do it. So I am now. But yeah, I mean, I think it's tough sometimes for women and mothers to find space for themselves.
So Emma Gray is emerging from the closet then, with brush in hand.
She definitely is. I went to one of the teachers that I trained with, and I said, this is not a new chapter. I was like, this is a new book.
Do you think about your legacy then? Maybe not quite yet as a painter, given what you just said, but in terms of how you're facilitating other artists, which is absolutely wonderful what you're doing, Emma, particularly female artists. Do you consider what your reputation is and how people will regard your legacy?
Not really, because I think my mum's great influence on this, actually. She was just like, get on and do it. And even, the poor Dalai Lama who's in the press right now, I mean, his whole thing is about action. And I think, I'm not too romantic about looking back. I just am romantic about following what I believe in. And, I do know that I've stuck to my bloody guns, and I've been very specific, and I've tried to have good ethics and values. And I've tried to really stick to that and be consistent. So I'm proud of that. And everything else we'll see. I mean, I hope I've impacted a couple of people's lives. That would be nice. And I think I have in the meditation studio and in the gallery. And, even that is just something to be happy about.
What type of artist would you like to be described as?
Oh, no.
Shall I come back and ask you that in a few months' time?
Yes. I don't know. But I do know that I was just writing to the woman that's giving me the show, and she goes, I really like how the paintings have a lot of psychic energy, and she said you have a kind of vision, and I'm trying to just let that emerge. So just trying to let what I feel inside myself emerge as an image.
Can I call you a visionary artist?
Possibly, yeah.
Well, Emma, I'm excited to watch how you evolve as an artist then, now that, you're going to be taking back time in your life that you haven't had maybe ever before. So there's all kinds of possibilities, isn't there? Maybe for yourself as an artist and the different mediums, because you have experience in the different mediums in the past.
Yeah. 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 No, it's exciting. It is nice. It definitely, and I'll say, oddly, the death of my father, I think, is kind of important in this as well. Oddly. I don't know why these big passages in life shift us a bit. Yeah.
Most definitely. How do you think that has altered things for you?
Well, I think he had a very difficult and tragic life. And I think he'd be the first person to admit it. He had polio when he was a kid. And I think he suffered tremendously. And in a funny kind of way, I think I carried some of that psychic suffering. I don't know how else to describe it. And his death was this great liberation. I felt it as a great liberation. And I also feel like my relationship with him on the other side is really good. And I feel like he's kind of helping me in a weird way because he couldn't paint either. I mean, he just did it as his Sunday afternoon thing. He loved it. But I feel like, there's sort of when he dies and he couldn't do it, I was like, well, what else am I doing? Why wouldn't I?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? The impact that these life events have.
Of the death of a parent. Yeah, it is. Yeah. These big things come along and they kind of just shift the needle a bit. And you're like, oh my God, he's died. I could die any day now. Like I haven't got 3, I don't know. So like, what am I waiting for? What's anyone waiting for?
Well, it sounds as if you're no longer waiting.
I'm not. But it's combination of also having the time and space. So you have to kind of fight to make it, but then also just things align,
Yeah. All the energy is coming together in the right way for you, in a very positive way.
I hope so. Yeah.
Well, talking about big events, let's remind everybody again about the exhibition that you're having next month.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And it's going to be about the tree paintings. I mean, and literally this space is being created, but it's, I think June 16th is going to be the opening. I'll send you the link when I know more details. But in the meantime, I've got to go and finish painting.
Ah, there is that part to it, right?
Yeah.
And tell everybody how they can find you online, Emma, on your social media and website and that sort of thing.
My gallery, I've got all these different bloody websites, so that's something I have to figure out too. But the gallery is emmagrayhq.com, GRAYHQ.com. And then I've got, on Instagram, my own paintings are on Emma Gray Studio, EMMAGRAYSTUDIO. And I have a website for that too, but it's rather desperately needing some help. But the gallery website is good. So.
And the physical address of Five Garages Studio?
Well, it's complicated, because it's not at my home. It's on the hill at the bottom of my home and it's in an alley. And so I don't publish the address because otherwise people show up my front door and I don't want that. So, what happens is I'm kind of, it's another secret. You see, everything's kind of been secret and hidden in a funny kind of a way. And that's what's changing now. But most people know roughly where I am in Santa Monica and they just, it says on the website, you can, request the map. And that's what I send to people so they know where to park and how to get there because the alley really doesn't have an address, as most alleys don't. But the map locates it very clearly.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Emma. And I must say, it seems like you're in a very good place now. And I want to wish you all the very best with the journey to come.
I'm very excited about all of it. And it's fun. It's been really fun talking to you. And I've got a lot of women artists who I can send your way who would be fascinating interviews, I think.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to that. Emma, thank you so much for being my guest and spending time with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for focusing and letting me talk about my own paintings. It's really meaningful.
My thanks again to Emma. And if you know any female artists whose work you admire, please do drop me a line to hollowellstudios@gmail.com. That's HOLLOWELL. And let me know who you would like to hear from on the show. We have some great guests lined up, including Maria Martinez-Canaz, Erin Spencer, Akiko Steirenberger, Christine Calabrese, and Catherine Andrews, to name just a few. If you find yourself on Instagram, please do give us a follow at the AART Podcast. That's art with 2 A's. And if you're listening on the Apple Podcast player, please do leave us a 5-star rating and a review, because that helps others find the show. And of course, we'd love it if you would share this show with anyone you think would enjoy getting to know these female artists. Until next week, thank you for taking the time to listen to the AART Podcast.